Good evening, New Brunswick. I'm Charlie Cradaville, editor of New Brunswick Today, broadcasting live from Eyes on New Jersey studios with a special episode of the New Brunswick Today show for you. This episode is titled S.O.S. Save Our School, because believe it or not, we are in danger of losing one of our public schools in the city of New Brunswick. So if you take nothing away from this broadcast except this, please join me and other community members on Tuesday, November 26th at the Lincoln Annex School in New Brunswick. That's 165 Somerset Street. We'll be gathering there at 3 p.m. to make our voices heard and send a message to the Board of Education, Robert Wood Johnson Hospital, and the New Brunswick Development Corporation that we don't have any extra schools to spare. We can't sell any of our schools, and we can't afford to lose that school. So this story actually starts long ago. So before we get to the Lincoln Annex, let's start by talking about Redshaw. And this here on the screen is the what used to be called New Brunswick High School before the current high school building opened. It was on Livingston Avenue at the corner with Delavan Street in New Brunswick. It was a beautiful building that, again, many people graduated, got their high school diplomas there in the city of New Brunswick. And eventually, when they built the new high school, it changed to an elementary school. And so Redshaw Elementary was unfortunately torn down in the year 2006. This was a huge blunder because the whole plan was to replace the school very quickly with a brand new one. But guess what? The state ran out of money, and this is what that site looked like 6 years later. I took this photo when I lived in this neighborhood in 2012. So all the kids who had been promised a new school, well, they went through their entire elementary school careers not able to walk to their neighborhood school, not able to attend classes in that type of a school building. Let's show you where they were. So this is a building known around town as the Warehouse School. It's at 40 Van Dyke Avenue in New Brunswick. It's at the corner with Jersey Avenue. It's in the industrial part of our city. It is across from, notably, a chemical factory and the unemployment office. It has no playground or recreational area, and it has been in almost constant use by the New Brunswick School District since they began leasing it right around the time that they tore down the Redshaw School, foolishly did, and ended up without a space for hundreds of kids. Almost 1,000 kids went to the Redshaw School, and this was the Redshaw School for many years. They were going to classes in a warehouse outside of their neighborhoods. They had to be bused there, and it was a huge disaster. Among other things, it led to the people of New Brunswick overthrowing Mayor Jim Cahill's appointed school board system, and we actually now have school board elections because this was something that the community was very upset about. Obviously, people would prefer to have their children attending school in a building that has natural light, that has recreational spaces, and also one that the kids can walk to and the parents can walk them there. But this was not the case for many years until Redshaw finally opened a new school a couple years ago. And unfortunately, the Board of Ed is considering sending hundreds of New Brunswick children back to that warehouse. We just learned that this week. That's why this is an SOS. This is an emergency. We're going to tell you how we got to where we are with the Lincoln Annex situation. So for those of you who don't know the Lincoln Annex School, it's again was a Catholic school campus, actually, with both an elementary school and a high school for many years. Finally, the last piece of that campus closed in 2010. It was purchased by the Board of Education a few years later, and then they reopened it. It was one of the best things they ever did. They turned that abandoned, vacant Catholic school into a public elementary school in the neighborhood that needs it most. So this is a neighborhood that has lots of kids and barely any schools. The entire 5th and 6th Ward only has one school for kids K through 8. That's the Lincoln School. It's 109 years old, and it was overcrowded. So the Board of Ed did a smart thing, a good thing, and purchased and upgraded the old Catholic school to supplement the Lincoln School. That's why they call it the Lincoln Annex. So today, kids growing up in those neighborhoods will go to the original Lincoln School, the old Lincoln School, for kindergarten through 3rd grade. And then for 4th through 8th grade, they would go to the more modern Lincoln Annex School, which again used to be the St. Peter's Catholic School. It's been a success. It's been open since 2016, so just over 3 years. This is the 4th year that it's a public school, and the parents love it. It's one of the best schools in the district. It was honored for being a future-ready school, silver certified as a future-ready school. The kids are doing very well on the standardized tests, and people are very happy in that neighborhood because they can walk their kids to school. Their kids are not far away, and if for some reason the kids do need transportation, it's not an issue for most families. But they are now in danger of losing that school. And here are about a dozen men who are part of this issue here. So this is an announcement on June the 3rd in our city. This is a bunch of officials who are very powerful people with various affiliations, including the hospital that has taken over so much of the 5th Ward neighborhood. Robert Wood Johnson is what we call it. Now it's part of a larger corporation called RWJ Barnabas Health. It's the largest healthcare corporation in the state of New Jersey. And they are working with a company called New Brunswick Development Corporation. You may be familiar with their work. They've built about half of the big buildings in downtown, including some of the projects that haven't exactly delivered on what they promised, things like the Fresh Grocer Supermarket, which is vacant and not has no tenant, nothing to do in that space, in a key piece of real estate in downtown New Brunswick. But these folks, and you might recognize some elected officials in this photograph as well. I don't see any ladies, but these men wanted to get together and build, an important thing, a cancer institute. We already have a cancer institute, but they want to build a larger, bigger building and connect it to the Robert Wood Johnson campus. And what was interesting about this announcement on June 3rd was they had a lot of the pieces together. They had some drawings of what it might look like. They had a price tag of $750 million. And they also had a number of the partners there, people here posing for this photograph. One thing they didn't have to say was where it will be. And New Brunswick today has learned that the site, the intended site, the preferred site for this expansion of the hospital in partnership with Devco is the existing public school known as Lincoln Annex. So even though it's only been open for 3 years, this being the 4th year, Robert Wood Johnson and Devco have stated they want to begin construction on their building, which would again force out the public school. They want to begin construction as early as next fall. So by this time next year, if they get their way, those kids will not have the school that they've had for the past 3 or 4 years. Again, a school that's doing well, a school that's meeting a severe need in that community, and a school that they just recently spent a lot of money to install solar panels on the roof. Those just went up this summer. They completed that project. And now, if these folks, those men that you saw there, get their way, the school would be closed, demolished, and replaced with yet another expansion to Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital. So a huge controversy is brewing over this. Parents are up in arms. I'm upset about it. And we have seen some coverage in the press about it that has led to people coming to government meetings, speaking up about it, and ultimately asking important questions and getting answers. I will point out that none of this information was offered to us by the Board of Education or the people in power. We had to ask for it. We had to fight just to learn that this was happening, just to confirm these rumors that were going around. And it's taken many months to get to this stage, but I do want to commend a New Brunswick resident and activist named Matt Smith, who I've known for many years and worked closely with. He is sticking up for the kids in our community and the parents and families that will be affected by this potential change. So he and I and many others came out to Tuesday night's Board of Education meeting, and he had some important questions to ask. We're trying to find out if they are thinking about selling the school, which they've admitted to, where will the kids go? And of course, our fear in the back of our head is that that warehouse school, which is now leased directly by the Board of Education, could be once again utilized to warehouse our kids if they lose that school. So here is exactly what the Board of Education President, Diana Solis, had to say when Matt Smith asked him about that.
No, there is no school, there is no state-of-the-art school that's available right now. The most updated schools are filled with students. And so what we do have available is 40 Van Dyke, which is what we've used in the past as our swing space, and where our P-Tech program is currently housed. So we do have things that we have to keep in mind if we would be pursuing any further talks about.
In your estimation, President, is the facility at 40 Van Dyke the state-of-the-art facility for our New Brunswick public school students?
Absolutely not, but that would be a temporary arrangement.
So is that the current plan under, if a proposal was to be made that met the needs of what the Board of Ed perceives that those needs to be for the New Brunswick school system, that kids from Lincoln would be moved to the warehouse on 40 Van Dyke temporarily?
There is no proposal as of yet. We will cross that bridge when we get there, sir.
Okay, because it sounds like that's at least under consideration. And if that is the case, then I think that's a grave concern for any student or parent who currently has students at Lincoln Elementary. Obviously, the warehouse at 40 Van Dyke, in your own.
So there you heard it. That is what the district has. They don't have any extra state-of-the-art schools to send the kids to, but they do have a warehouse. They have a warehouse that they have a lot of euphemisms for. They sometimes call it a swing space. They call it Building 40, but it is unmistakably a warehouse, and certainly less than ideal for location for schooling. I think any parent, any student would agree that if they had a choice of having an elementary school in their neighborhood or being bused to a facility like that, it's pretty obvious what the real preference is of the community. And now that we have an elected Board of Ed, we're hoping that our Board of Education will stand up for the preferences of the community rather than the preferences of wealthy corporations like the hospital and like Devco. Again, Matt Smith really laid it out on the line. It's a grave concern if the plan is going to be to put the kids in the warehouse, again, because even though it's characterized as a temporary situation, we still remember what happened with Redshaw Elementary. We still remember the broken promises of tearing down the school and expecting a new school in just a couple of years and not getting it. Those kids being stuck in the warehouse for years on end. They're spending their entire elementary school careers in that warehouse. We cannot allow the same mistake to happen again. And that's why I'm getting involved. That's why I'm encouraging you to get involved and join us again on Tuesday, November 26th at 3 p.m. This is the school that was called St. Peter's. It's now called Lincoln Annex, and it's directly across from the main entrance to Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital. You can't miss it. It's going to be a big crowd there. We're encouraging members of the media to come and shine a light on this. And we also want you to come and make your voice heard. And the goal is to raise awareness. So this will be done at a time of day when kids are leaving the school, parents are coming to pick them up, and we want everybody to know exactly what's going on because, again, this information is information that we only got because we pressed for it. We kept asking the questions, and now that we know that the warehouse is under consideration as a temporary replacement, now is the time to get organized before it's too late, before the school is sold, before the school is closed, and before the kids are back in that place. So I do want to, commend the Board of Education president for one thing. She was the one who admitted that there had been a meeting with Board of Education officials and the New Brunswick Development Corporation. So after New Brunswick Today started asking questions about this, the board didn't really have answers. The superintendent seemed to be caught off guard by our questions. And in October, on October 11th, there was a meeting that I can confirm had these three folks in it. So this is Mr. Chris Palladino here. In front of the fresh grocer before it closed. He is the head of the New Brunswick Development Corporation, and he invited Board of Education officials to come to his office in downtown New Brunswick. And here's two of the people who came to meet with him. We've got Frank Lodolce, pictured here wearing some sort of equipment to fly, I guess. He is the facilities director for New Brunswick Public Schools, and he was in the meeting. We can confirm that. And the other gentleman here is Mr. Richard Janarone. He is the business administrator for the district. He's paid even more than the superintendent. I believe he makes more than $216,000. He's been in the position for a long time. And he remembers the old days when we didn't have school board elections and when the mayor controlled the school system with a much heavier hand. And he was the one who was in the meeting. He took the meeting. He didn't take any notes in the meeting. And I thought it was very telling and very concerning that they didn't bring a lawyer. Whenever you're doing real estate deals or discussing these types of matters, you would think that you already have a lawyer. The Board of Education's had a lawyer named George Hendricks for 23 years, and he is somebody who knows the city well and also knows the board well and knows the school district well. And I still can't figure out why they wouldn't have brought their attorney to that meeting. And I had some pointed questions for them at this same board meeting where you saw Mr. Smith questioning them. I got up and had a number of questions about that meeting and pressed them on it. Mr. Janarone still refuses to admit who he met with. You'll hear this firsthand. I asked a simple question. I said, hey, who was in the meeting? I'd like to know who was in the meeting. And even though Mr. Palladino has confirmed to New Brunswick Today he was in the meeting and he hosted the meeting, Mr. Janarone is, for whatever reason, protecting that information and keeping it from the public. And here you can hear firsthand what he had to say to my questions on Tuesday. So there was a meeting, as was discussed earlier tonight, October 11th at DevCo headquarters. And I want to thank you, Madam President, for informing us that that meeting had happened. I'll point out that it was not mentioned in the Facilities Committee report last month. It was not mentioned in the Facilities Committee report this month. Mr. Janarone and Mr. Lodolce were in the meeting. They didn't mention it after we started asking about the rumors of Lincoln Annex being sold. And I did share with all of you my correspondence with Mr. Janarone where I asked a simple question. Wanted to know who was in the meeting. And still have not gotten an answer. But through the chair, can Mr. Janarone tell us who all was in that meeting?
I'll answer for him. If there wasn't, I didn't attend the meeting, but I presume if our board president says there was a meeting, I believe there was. If it was negotiations about purchasing or selling real estate, that would be not subject to disclosure at this time.
So through the chair, again, for Mr. Janarone, who was in the meeting, can he tell us who else was in the meeting?
No, he doesn't have to, and he won't. He declined already. to your request. He copied me that.
Okay, so I just want to be clear. Mr. Janarone's refusing to tell us who he met with about potentially selling the school.
Right, exactly.
Okay, gotcha, thank you. I believe that the three people in the meeting were Mr. Janarone, Mr. LaDolce, and Mr. Palladino. Now, can he tell us, or anyone who was in the meeting, tell us what precipitated that meeting? What drove them to come to DevCo headquarters in downtown New Brunswick on October
You
11th?
heard the opening statement of our board president, and I think that addresses the issue for tonight. She made it very clear what the purpose of that meeting is. We don't have to repeat it. You're an intelligent person, you heard it.
Well, thank you for the compliment, but I do think it's important to have all the facts on the record. And I know at the last meeting, Ms. Solis, you said this, and I believe you meant it, when you said that the board wishes to have nothing but full transparency with the community. And I would submit that these dodgy, evasive responses are not full transparency. So I'll move on with my questions, but I gotta ask, why on earth didn't Mr. Janarone and Mr. LaDolce bring their attorney? Why didn't Mr. Hendricks come with them to this meeting? If they're talking about selling a school, Mr. Hendricks has been representing this board for 23 years, he says. He went to that school, and he also has lived on that side of town for a long time. Why didn't they bring the attorney?
Okay, so.
You know, Mr. Cradle, I know you're dying to know the answers about this clandestine meeting that you believe happened and some conspiracy that went on, okay? The meeting, I gave you the documents per your open public records request. I'll continue to answer your open public records request. I gave you the information that I presented to them, where the meeting we told them what the Board of Education would require if and when they ever presented us a proposal for the school. Thank you.
And you did not answer my question. Why on earth didn't you bring your attorney to the meeting?
To answer your question, Mr. Prattville, the attorney does not need to be present because the attorney, if and when a proposal would happen, only would get involved in the contractual portion of it to follow the district's best interest. Now, if this is just a conversation between two different entities, the attorney need not be present.
Need not, but a best practice would certainly be to have your attorney present. And I think also...
And so there you have it. You heard how I was treated when I asked about this stuff. I was essentially, they more or less made fun of me. Mr. Janarone said that it was a clandestine meeting, and he made it seem like it might not have even happened. He said, if it happened. Well, dude, it happened. There was a meeting. I can confirm it. And the Board of Ed president was the one who admitted it, not Mr. Janarone, not Mr. LaDolce. They have essentially been keeping that a secret from the public until Ms. Solis made that information public. And now we've got a situation where these folks are talking about potentially shutting down a school, selling it to a private corporation, and putting the kids in a warehouse again. I think that any reasonable person would see this as an unacceptable outcome for our community. This should not happen in any community, but it certainly should not happen in New Brunswick. We're home to Rutgers University. We're home to 2 world-class hospitals. We're home to the worldwide headquarters of Johnson & Johnson. And while those folks do a lot of great things, they don't have any right to take away a school from our community. This is a good thing that we did as a community, opening up a new school. We needed it. We have a lot of kids. The district's got more than 10,000 children enrolled, and the city is still growing. So we can't afford to lose any schools. We can't afford to close any schools. We can't afford to sell any schools. And that's why I'm broadcasting tonight this special S.O.S. And I need your help, New Brunswick. We need every man, woman, child to join us Tuesday, November 26th at 165 Somerset Street, the home of our Lincoln Annex School. We need to make our voices heard. We need to be loud and proud that we love our schools, and we don't want anyone to shut them down or take them over, no matter for what purpose. This is an issue of community control of our schools. The Board of Education are our elected representatives, and we are going to be raising the alarms to them that we won't stand for a sale of this school. And I hope, and really sincerely, I'm counting on people in the community to come out. We've had some great meetings with lots of community members who have expressed their concerns. They want to learn about this, and this is a chance for us to really take this to the next level and get more people involved, more people aware of it. If we can get a big turnout, even for just that 1 hour, we can make this a vocal message that will be received by our elected representatives, as well as the corporate community members like Robert Wood Johnson and like Devco, and hopefully they can rethink their proposal about shutting down this school and building on that site right away. If you agree with this, I hope that you can come out on Tuesday, November 26th. Again, it's at the Lincoln Annex School, 165 Somerset Street. All are welcome. This is a chance to make our voices heard and send that message that our school is not for sale. So thank you all for watching. I want to thank the great folks at Eyes on New Jersey News for helping us do this broadcast, and all of you for listening and following along. For those of you who are listening to our new podcast channel, we appreciate it. Definitely share it with your friends if you like it. And if you like what you're hearing here, please support us with a donation. New Brunswick Today depends on viewers like you, listeners like you, readers like you to keep us going. You can donate on our fantastic new website at newbrunswicktoday.com. And on every page, you'll see on the right-hand side an easy way to give a donation. And if you can, make it a monthly donation to sustain us well into the future so we can keep doing more broadcasts, more articles, more translations of those articles into Spanish language for the folks in the community who prefer Spanish. And we hope that you will continue to support us, and we hope to see you out there on Tuesday, November 26th at the Save Our School rally. Thanks again to all of you for listening today, and we'll see you again real soon. Charlie Cradaville signing off.